Everyone, this is Rambling Collector here, back with our next Halloween 2023 reviews. And for this video, we will be talking about the self-published work, Unleashed by E.L. Jefferson. Now, I have read and reviewed one of their works in the past, that being Twisted Justice. So, it felt only right to talk about this horror author, of course in the celebration of spooky season. With that being said, let's get started. However, I will advise you of this now, in all seriousness though. There are massive trigger warnings throughout this entire book. And I will warn you all now, if you cannot handle sensitive topics such as extreme violence or violence against those who are disabled in any way, shape, or form, or extreme abuse, I advise you to click off of this video right now. If you cannot handle topics like this, or if you are sensitive to it, click off right now. Now, if you are still here, let us begin with the actual review. So first of all, I will say that Unleashed is not afraid to dive into some very dark subject matter, from illegal experimentation to parental abuse. And this does not hesitate at all with some of the stuff that goes on in here. And it all starts with Dr. Layton finding a patient who was recently hit in a drunken hit and run and was hit by a full-on truck. And he notices that this person is regenerating completely to the point that he is near comatose, sort of a healing coma in a way. And by noticing this, Dr. Layton decides to experiment on this patient, whom, for all intents and purposes, is dead to the public eye. However, I feel like Dr. Layton here truly personifies the quote, "The road to hell is paved with good intentions." For instance, he experiments with this unconscious person, watching as their organs and skin and everything else continues to grow back at an astonishing rate. As he feeds them both IV, he drips of nutrients and fluids, as well as keeps him sedated with narcotics and sedatives, all combined into a cocktail to keep this patient under, as he experiments with some of their stuff, noticing how he continues to regenerate, even lost organs, by adding in artificial implants like artificial hearts. And then he notices that this patient's lungs, heart, kidneys, all of which are regenerating, even the blood that they lose is being regenerated at a vast rate, even combating invasive diseases. So with Dr. Layton, he has the purest of intentions by using this person to possibly help to cure unstable diseases such as cancer, even looking to prolong human life. However, there are some things you just do not go messing around with, especially a foreign entity whom you've recognized as non-human, and you do not transplant their organs into patients no matter your good intentions. Now, for all intents and purposes, though, he does the transplants of both blood transfusions as well as organ transplants, involving hearts, kidneys, lungs, all of that, to various patients across the country. And there are 3 patients that he visits personally in his own hospital by doing blood transfusions with this unconscious patient, whom he calls John Doe. And from that, we see how all these patients react after getting this foreign substance into their bodies. And needless to say, it's not very well. And I will say, though, one of the things I liked was that it was an interesting experience with this novel, going back and forth between the doctor himself, as he is experimenting on John Doe, and his patients that he treats, those ranging from blood transfusions to organ donations. However, the side effects of all of this results in them changing into full-on demonic transformations, which leads them to act out in very violent and murderous ways. Now, 3 of these patients in particular are the main focus of this novel, them being in characters who are undergoing very abusive situations. For instance, you have a child going through Down syndrome whom needs transplants for lungs, right? And he gets them. However, listening to the mother essentially saying that she does not love her own child and that she has put so much time and money into him, despite being divorced and all that stuff, and you realize these people just don't deserve to be parents. There's even one instance where you have a young girl, and please be warned now, this is some dark stuff, a teenage girl who has the mentality of a 5-year-old being used as a sex worker by her own mother, even being used by her own uncle, of all things. Yeah, this stuff dives into some very dark subject matter, like I've said, and Jesus, I'm not even kidding when I say this. When I read that part in the novel, it actually made me physically sick. E.L. Jefferson, you have my absolute respect for not dancing around subjects like this. He gets to the front of it, and quite frankly, he does not hesitate with some of the dark subject matter that he covers. However, with these particular patients, even one who's going through kidney transplants and has to be taken care of for a while, we see how all three of them are in bad situations, with a husband who is practically immobilized due to no kidneys, having to be taken care of by his wife. We later see that same wife having affair after affair behind her husband's back because he simply cannot move. We see a daughter being abused by her mother because she has a weak heart and has the mentality of a 5-year-old. We see a boy with Down syndrome having to listen to his mother constantly berating him, how he cannot physically show his emotions, but he hears everything that she says. And I gotta say, the experience of watching the patients undergo their transformations from human to demonic was definitely terrifying in its own right, especially considering how some of these patients were victims of domestic abuse. And quite frankly, you can say it however you want, whether physical, emotional, whatever. It's not okay. This stuff dives into some very dark subject matter, and quite frankly, it will leave some of you, like me, feeling a bit ill. But I will say, I am kind of curious to see where it goes from here with the second novel of this series, considering that at the end of the novel, we get the patient John Doe finally waking up and interrogating the doctor who is experimenting on him. Not to mention, we also see some of these patients wandering around causing mass havoc and murder sprees. And as well as we see a group of people who are talking about somebody called the Dark Mother returning. Pretty interesting stuff. But all that being said, though, let's go ahead and talk about random thoughts. So, one major complaint that I do have about this novel is the over-the-top violence. Now, I understand that sometimes this could be seen by some of you as retribution for some of these people's actions, but the thing is, I am no stranger to violent action. I have seen Game of Thrones, I have watched a ton of other shows and movies that dive into very gruesome action sequences, even a lot of anime that shows like fountains of blood being shown off, or just limbs being torn off, things like that. I'm not a stranger to extreme amounts of violence. However, this one here just feels a little too over the top, to the point that it just becomes predictable. For instance, after the main victims who undergo their transformations from the organ transplants, after they enact their retributions, they still go out and kill other people for seemingly no other reason or for personal gain. Whether it's just wanton violence or things like that, it just feels so over the top that at the end of the day, I'm just sitting here thinking, okay, how much further are you going to go? Are you going to keep doing more psychological torture, or are you going to try and do something else to progress the plot? I'm sorry, that's just one of my major complaints with this novel, is that the sheer over-the-top violence became kind of I want to say predictable after a while. Granted, the book itself is still very good, especially considering it's only like 100-something pages at most, nearly 200. But in that time period, I just read all these victims having their retributions, and after that, just keeps on going. And from there, it just felt repetitive, that they would do some violent action, this person did this to them, and then they would enact vengeance. It's kind of rinse, repeat, you know? Though I will say, watching the daughter finally get revenge on her mother, who had abused her, that at least was satisfying to the extreme. But that being said, though, let's move on to the final score. So overall, I would give Unleashed a good 8 out of 10 at most. Just because, like I said, the over-the-top violence did make the book a little bit more rinse-repeat after a while. Overall, though, I still feel like this novel deserves recognition simply because it is not afraid to dive into some dark subject matter. And if you guys are curious, though, to see some of the other Halloween reviews I've done, both of last year and what I'm currently working on this year, feel free to check out the playlist for Halloween reviews here in the corner. Or, if you're curious to see some of the other books that I have covered, ranging from self-published authors all the way to regular books. And if you're also curious to check out Twisted Justice for yourself, if you can handle that, then I will leave a link to my Book Rambles playlist if you want to check that out. Overall, you guys, if you've stuck around to the end of this video, thank you so much for listening. It really means a lot to me. And quite frankly, I hope you all are enjoying the spooky season at the very least. I hope you're having fun, checking out some new horror literature, whatever floats your boat. Once again, thank you all for listening. If you like this video, feel free to leave a like, comment your thoughts down below, or subscribe if you're curious for more future rambles that I do on this channel. Or if you have any suggestions, feel free to let me know those as well. Once again, thank you all for listening. This is Rambling Collector, signing off for now, and I will see you all in the next Halloween review. Stay tuned, fellow readers.